ahead.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Honka, and I have a company called Your Key to Senior Living Options. During this pandemic, we've been bringing great speakers to our audience here in the villages and around the country. And today we're joined by Jackie Kuhn from the Alzheimer's Family Organization. This is actually our second safety training in a series that we've been doing on keeping your loved ones safe in their home and the surrounding areas. So we're really excited to have Jackie here from the Alzheimer's Family Organization. Next slide, please. So again, my name is Lisa Honka, and I own the company Your Key to Senior Living Options. I'm here in the villages, and I help support seniors to find resources in their home to keep them safe, but also if they want to transition to independent, assisted, or memory care communities. I work with all of the communities in the area. I'm here as a free resource to help people to stay safe. And I encourage you all to go on my website and look at some of the classes that we've been doing. I think there's over 40 classes that we've done during this pandemic on all sorts of different topics. And in fact, Dr. Jim has done a couple of them from TLC, and he's here joining us on this Zoom call today. So thanks, Jim, for what you've done for us and bringing, again, education to the families here. Next slide, please. So some of our upcoming events are going to be with TLC, Overcoming Isolation and Loneliness, and that's going to be on April 22nd. And also the sheriff is going to be doing a presentation on the DREAM program. For those people that have a loved one who has memory loss and they are looking for a Wander bracelet, the DREAM program has just gotten a $100,000 grant, and you could talk to the sheriff. She's going to be actually doing a presentation with us on April 29th about the DREAM program and getting a free bracelet, a tracking bracelet for those people who have a loved one with memory loss. We also have a caregiver support group, and it's running currently now, and it's every Saturday at 2 p.m. and you have to sign up to be a part of that. Again, all our events are on my website, Your Key to Senior Living Options, and all our last classes have also been archived there. So there's lots of information for families on the website. Next slide, please. So again, we're so excited to have Jackie here. She's going to be talking about safety training. This is for, again, families who have a loved one with memory loss, dementia, Alzheimer's. And again, the first series is already archived on my website, but it brought us a great deal of information. So we're excited to have Jackie here. Jackie, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the Alzheimer's Family Organization and your background?
Okay, absolutely. Welcome back, everybody. We're excited for this series number 2 regarding safety training. And as Lisa said, I work for the Alzheimer's Family Organization. We are a not-for-profit organization that the word family in our name is regarding our caregivers. Our focus is the caregiver. We want to make sure that the caregiver is taking care of themselves, because we know, again, the caregiver is the one who remembers the journey. The loved one with the diagnosis does not. And we want to make sure that they are looked after and we can give them as much support, encouragement as we possibly can. It's important that our family members who are the caregivers take care of themselves, because we know that close to 65–70% of our caregivers become ill or pass away before the loved one with the diagnosis. So we know how important it is that the caregiver takes a look at themselves and focus on what they can do each day, sometimes each hour, to make sure that they are taking care of themselves. The organization, again, is one that I'm considered a community educator. I go around, do talks, I do one-on-ones, I do phone calls, anything that we can do to make sure that, again, that we're providing as much assistance as we possibly can. We don't have all the answers. Nobody does. But we do want to make sure that, again, that we're there for our family members. Myself, I've been in long-term care over 50 years. I'm an executive director by trade, social worker. And so it's important for me on a personal level too, to make sure that our caregivers and even our loved ones with the diagnosis are cared for, are remembered and reminded of their rights and reminded of, again, who they are. There's still a person there. And so we want to make sure that our loved ones and caregivers have the dignity with this diagnosis and during this journey. If at all possible, we can be of assistance. That's what our hope is. So today we're going to continue just a little bit about what we talked about last week or last month. If you didn't get a chance to be present, please go back and listen. These ideas and thoughts that I'm presenting today, again, are ones that have been provided by myself of years of experience, also with many caregivers giving ideas and thoughts that they've used in their home, because we know that maybe just one item, maybe one opportunity with these suggestions may be a benefit to you. And for that reason, we're excited to be back and presenting. Now, next slide, please. We're going to just do a last thing we talked about last month was medications. And I just want to reiterate again with the safety and precautions with medications that, you know, place all your medications in a safe place, away from the loved one, preferably under lock and key if you can. We want to make sure that you check the expiration dates of all medications and supplements as often as you can. Remember too that your pharmacist is your best friend. If you see a lot of medications, it's good to kind of review those sometimes with your pharmacist to make sure that there's no medications contradicting one or the other, because sometimes many people go to more than one physician. So we encourage you to check with your pharmacy with all your medications. Also, you know, I've had a rule of thumb my whole life and my career is that if it says stay out of reach of children, it should stay out of the reach of your loved one. More than likely, if it says it's a precaution, it could be dangerous. Those are the items that we want to make sure are under lock and key. Just as an example, in my very young days of being an activity director, I had purchased little perfume bottles for Christmas for my female residents. And not having a good understanding of the diagnosis at the time and what was happening, I was a young pup. And lo and behold, one of my residents drank the perfume. And it just goes to show you, they cannot determine a liquid from anything other than what they assume to be maybe water or Coke or some type of soft drink. So we want to make sure that, you know, they don't get a hold of something that could be very dangerous to them. Another example that I had is that we had one of our residents, our Effordent tablets that we use for dentures look like peppermint mints. And so one of our residents stuck one of those in their mouth, and lo and behold, it did burn their mouth. So again, they don't always know what they're putting into their mouth. They're just assuming of what it looked like, whether it was a liquid or whether it was candy. They don't understand. They don't read labels. So we as a caregiver have to read those labels and make sure, again, if it says stay out of reach of children, it should stay out of the reach of our loved ones. Next slide. We're going to talk about transporting your loved one. You know, life doesn't end when we are being a caregiver and with our loved one. We want to go places. We want to travel. And sometimes that's just trial and error. It's an opportunity to see, can this be successful? Can this not be successful? So we know that many desire to continue to do some of the same things they've done in their earlier years. And so we know that transporting your loved one can sometimes be very difficult. If you seat them in their front seat, it can be easier for you. You know, stand beside passenger seat and put the left leg in, and then put the left leg in first, and then sit them, and then the right leg. So that way they're able to sit down first, facing the outside with the legs out then, and put the left leg in then, and then the right leg in. So we want to take that safety. We want to seat them in the seat and then begin to transport and move their legs in the right position. You can also use your left hip as a gentle nudge to keep the loved one in the seat while you're doing that. So we want to make sure that it's safety first, and how we get them to the car and how we put them in the car as to prevent any injuries. Put the loved one in the back seat if he is grabbing or at you or the steering wheel. Then we know that we need to place them in the back seat as a safety for yourself, because you cannot try to maneuver somebody on the passenger side as well as trying to drive a vehicle. You can kid lock the windows and doors. You can always put the seatbelt on the loved one. Having music on via radio or CD may help soothe the traveling. Old radio shows talking about the trip, talking about the things outside may also help. Engage with them. You know how we do with trying to keep our little ones entertained while we're traveling, and they begin to become restless. We think of a game, I Spy My Little Eyes, and look for things outside the window. Maybe doing colors, looking for something red, looking for something green. There's things that we can do to help keep their mind off of being restless. We also have what we call fidget mats, and they're like a placemat with all kinds of gadgets on it that can be placed in their lap, and they can use their hands and play with that in their hands and keep them active in that way. Sometimes they're engaged in a movie. They can be engaged in something on a video that you can put on and allow them to watch. So you have to kind of know your own loved one the best, what keeps them entertained. If we're going to go a long distance, you're going to want to have some frequent stops to let them get out and stretch their legs. If in a parking lot and you're having a difficult time, if someone comes up to help, accept the help. The one thing the caregivers that, you know, we're having to assist most of the time are ones that don't want to ask for assistance or help. So it's important that we don't shy away from asking someone to help if it's necessary. Often, if your loved one is a male, having another male is helpful. Sometimes if you're going to take a trip, it might be good to have two people alert and oriented to what's going on so that they're able to assist while the other one is driving. Have someone help may also be a distraction for the difficult behaviors. If they begin to have behaviors, sometimes somebody extra can help distract those loved ones. Traveling is a thing that, you know, like I shared just a minute ago, is trial and error. I would have family members say to me, well, I want to take mom or dad to our Thanksgiving gathering or our Christmas gathering, and maybe it's a couple hours away. And I always say, well, it's trial and error. If you do this, it's not successful, you know not to do it again. But if you do it, be prepared that once they get to their destination, they're not going to have the ability to stay calm and collected for a long period of time. We know their attention span is short. So wherever you're going, if you're going to that type of destination, is to make sure that you got plenty for them to do, or be prepared to turn around and come back home, because it's not always the best. Too much stimulation, too much activity sometimes is not the best for your loved one if you're traveling that destination and knowing you've got the trip home. And a lot depends too if they're of their continency. Are they continent or uncontinent? To the point of, you know, how difficult is this trip going to be? Remember, the trip is on the caregiver. the loved one in the front seat or the back seat is not concerned about the drive and trying to keep somebody entertained or trying to help them maneuver around, it falls on the caregiver. So make sure you as a caregiver are prepared to make this journey. And if you're not, then I would suggest not taking that trip. Some people drive 10, 12 hours and do just fine. Not everybody is that capable. So again, you know your loved one, you know what would be a good time or not time to go on a trip. And so it's important that, again, you take all those precautions that we just kind of shared. Next slide. In traveling with your loved one, this is kind of some of the things we had, use your handicap bathrooms with the one toilet and one exit. So that way you have no opportunity for them to exit out the door. You will not have to search for your loved one if he goes out the door or on the other side. So try to go to the handicap stalls. Use a wheelchair in the airport for your loved one if you are flying. This can be arranged at a time. Sometimes if the distance seems too much by car, sometimes flying will be the answer. Some airports have stipulations with flying with loved ones with this diagnosis, so I would always check with them first. But you can always get a wheelchair, that way you're not having to try to walk with them the distance from the ticket counter to the gate. Ask for that wheelchair. And they'll be able to provide that for you. Make sure you get direct flights if you're traveling with them. You don't want to have stops and have delays and layovers. You want to make sure that it's flying on a direct flight. Check out books with coupons for traveling to save money and learn about interest in that area. Stay with your loved one at the travel centers. Never leave them set there or think, okay, I'm going to run to the restroom. They're in their seat in the gate area. Don't leave them at all, because it just is not a safe idea that they can get up, begin to wander, and then you'll have a difficult time finding them. As we know, the airports can become very crowded, and particularly now when people are starting to fly again and to be able to get out. So we do not want to leave them unattended. That's another reason it's good to travel with someone else. So there's 3 of you. One can sit, one can go do what they need to do, come back, change places, and be able to keep everybody safe. If it is possible to travel with your loved one, if you have done a lot of traveling in the past, enjoy and believe you can do it, but do not do it if you do not feel comfortable with it, if you do not feel that you can do it by yourself. It is just wise to make sure that you take all precautions possible. Next slide. We're going to talk just about a few general hints that some of our caregivers have put together, is to focus on remaining skills. Look at your loved one and say, what skills do they still have available? What can they still do for themselves? As we all know, that we can make anybody dependent on us, and then our workload doubles. It's wise to keep them as independent as possible. Allow them to do it. It may not be the best. It may not be the way you would do it. If someone's dressing themselves and they put mismatched clothing on, that's okay. They did it. Praise them for that. They may not brush their teeth like you would want them to brush their teeth, but as long as they're doing it independently, we want to praise them for that and allow them to continue to do that. Don't give you more reason as a caregiver to make your workload greater. We want to keep them as independent as possible for as long as possible. So focus on the skills that they can do and allow them to continue to do that. Never attempt to reason with a person who has lost all reason. in the past, we've talked many times about, again, we have to constantly remind ourselves that reality is not where they are. We have to step out of that world of reality and to step into that world of make-believe. We have to be where they are. If they're back in their 30s, then that's where we need to go. We don't need to try to bring them back to the reality 50 years later, because they do not understand what that is. They do not know that that reality exists. So again, we've talked about this many times about making sure that we're stepping out of our world, yours and mine, of reality, and stepping into the world of where our loved one is. And it's so important. And I've given many examples in the past, but again, the one that really always comes back to me is, if I'm where they are, they're going to be content. If I try to bring them to current reality, I'm going to have a battle on my hands. And that's one thing we don't want to happen. If we can save ourselves a lot of aggravation, if we can save ourselves a lot of concern and frustration as a caregiver, we need to step into the world they're at currently. And I'll just give one prime example, and I apologize if I've shared this before, but I had a lady resident, Betty, who was in our memory care, and she had had twins when she was in her 20s. And so she was sitting on the couch holding two of our baby dolls that we had in our memory care suite. And she was crying, and I said, Betty, what's the matter? And she says, my babies are sick, my babies are sick. They need to see a doctor. I could have put her in reality and say, Betty, you're 80 years of age. These are not babies, these are dolls. That's reality. But I knew I had to step in the world that Betty was in, or I wasn't going to get her calmed down. So I went and got my physical therapist. I put a white jacket on him. I put a stethoscope around his neck, and I said, now you're Dr. Kuhn. And so Dr. Kuhn went in and saw Betty and said, Betty, what's the matter? And she says, my babies are sick, my babies are sick. And he said, well, I'm here to examine them. And so he took each individual baby at one time, put them back in her arms, and he told her, he said, Betty, you've got great motherly instincts. Your babies are going to be fine. Betty just sighed with relief. The crying stopped. She was so much better. That's just an example of stepping out of that world of reality and stepping into that world where that loved one is. Because if I had not, and if I had stuck to the plan of reality, would have the tears ended? No. Would have the frustration ended? No. Would have the worrying ended for Betty? No. So again, I can't stress enough, and I always say, if you take nothing away from these seminars, take that away. Stepping out of that world of reality and stepping into that world of make-believe wherever they are. Never attempt again to reason with a person who has lost all their reasoning. Think about what keeps a baby or a child comfortable, happy. Do not treat them like a child. Just love and care for them, and with those needs in mind. We can still meet their needs, and we can still live in that world with them and not treat them as a child. Remember, their filters and senses of judgment diminish. They may do things on purpose, but it comes from a demented mind. So they don't always know. And again, sometimes it's hard to know just exactly where they're coming from. But we want to make sure, again, that we remember it's not something that they would normally do, but it's where their mind is at that moment. Their motivation is from an uninhibited state of mind. They don't know always what they're doing. And so we have to, again, remember, stepping out of that world of reality and stepping into that world of make-believe. They like to watch what you are doing, cooking, cleaning, even dancing. We've talked before about how our loved ones on this journey mimic what you do. And so it's important as they mimic what you do, we're always aware of what we're doing. So sometimes your loved ones forget how to handle utensils. So you're sitting with them at the dinner table using your utensils, then they begin to mimic what you're doing. Again, if you're upset and your tone of voice shows it, they're going to mimic back with that tone of voice because they hear that tone of voice as being angry. We all know that tone of voice, don't we? We've heard it from our parents. We've heard it ourselves speak that to our own kids. So we know that, again, our tone of voice sets the mood for the day. It sets your mood as the caregiver. It sets your mood for the loved one on the journey. So we want to make sure, again, that our tone of voice and our example and the things that we're doing, whether it's brushing our teeth and allowing them to watch us, getting dressed, they can mimic you getting dressed, they can mimic you eating, they can mimic you dancing. They see what you're doing and they begin to do it as well. So it's very important, again, which is some of these general hints to remember, stepping out of that world of reality and stepping into that world of make-believe. Next slide. We're going to talk about some helpful hints for the caregiver. The caregiver is the one that must change and adapt. The loved one will not, because they cannot. So we know that we're the ones that have to make the changes. We're the ones that have to make the adjustments. And in doing that, we want to make them in such a way that we as a caregiver do not become frustrated. Remember, you are human. You, as all of us do, will make mistakes. Forgive yourself. Your loved one will do the same. So as a caregiver, we need to know that we're doing the best that we can. Caregivers need to take care of themselves. We talk about eating healthy. We talk about sleeping well. We talk about exercise regularly. You can only take care of your loved one if you remain healthy. Have regular checkups. Consider joining a support group that meets regularly. Many support groups have an activity group for loved ones at the same time. So that allows you the opportunity to go to a support group while your loved one is being in an activity group. It's so important, again, as we shared earlier, how the caregiver needs to take care of themselves. You've got to find time every day to do something for yourself. And whether it's finding a place that maybe you can take your loved one for 4 or 5 hours, or maybe a neighbor volunteers and says, hey, I've got a couple hours on my hand. Let me sit with your loved one while you go do something for yourself. Don't say no. Allow your neighbors, allow your friends, allow your family to help you. We're kind of stubborn sometimes that way. We all want to do it and do it by ourselves. But many times we're caring for an 80-some-year-old loved one on this journey, and I'm a caregiver of the same age. We don't have the energy. We don't have the patience. We don't have the strength to continue to do as we did 20 years before. So it's very important for the caregiver to make sure that you take care of yourself, going to the doctor, making sure that you're healthy. If you're having trouble sleep, ask the doctor for some assistance. If you're having some anxiety, I tell my family, sometimes it's not only your loved one who has to have the medication. You as a caregiver sometimes have to have a little something to just be able to take that edge off and to get you through that day. Memory daycare programs are available, some without charge, some with charge. So it's a matter of finding that availability, that good fit for your loved one. We have several places I know in our areas that do this, and it's important to take advantage of those. For you, the caregiver, you are a caregiver, you are a care partner, you are care with love, you are inspirational. Don't forget the successes that you're doing every day. it's important as a caregiver to say, you know what, this has been a good day. And if you haven't had a good day, review your day and find one thing that was good about it and stay focused on that, because it's important in our mind that when we lay our head at night, it's been a good day. And finding that one positive thing sometimes is all we have to hold on to. Every day you can give unconditional love to your loved one. Every day, regardless of your religion, we give unconditional love to our loved one on this diagnosis. You know, some of us have a different religion, some of us have a different culture. You make sacrifices for your loved one. Every day you act selflessly, giving and for the benefit of your loved one. This is the greatest love of all. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friend. That's John 15:13. Sometimes we have to go to the scriptures and to realize the things that we're doing, we are doing out of unconditional love. We know that the Bible teaches us the greatest of all these is love. So it's important. Find love in yourself. Don't put yourself down. It's important as a caregiver. We build up our own strength. We build up our own self-esteem. We build ourselves up to know that we're doing the best that we can. I talk to so many caregivers and they just feel helpless sometimes. And I just say, let's focus on one positive thing. And let's, keep that in mind throughout our day. Sometimes it's just the fact, hey, we got through this day and we have another night to rest and we can start all over again tomorrow. But it's important that we find something positive about what we're doing. Next slide. We're going to talk about some miscellaneous things, and these are just things kind of off the record of some of our caregivers and such, that it's important that we again can share some of this information with you. You know, some of us have all kinds of characters that are going through this journey. We've had the non-sayers, we've had belligerent, we've had soft-spoken, we've had very calming, we've had behaviors, we've had strippers. And some of you don't know that, you hate to take your loved one anywhere because they begin to strip their clothing. So some of these ideas for strippers are use a sweatshirt or any type of shirt cut down the back for the opening, so that way that they can't get out of it. If your loved one grabs you while being changed, put oven mitts on him or her hands to prevent any harm to you as the caregiver. Use a squeeze ball in hand or a rolled up washcloth if they tend to keep their hands closed. Many times you'll see them clenching their fingers like this, and we don't want that to stay. So we would roll up a washcloth and put it inside, so that way we know that there's some space there. They're not going to stay that way. You know, we're getting arthritic in our older days, and sometimes it doesn't take long if we stay in those positions that arthritis begins to set in more and more. So we want to make sure that, you get these stress balls. A lot of times at trade shows, health fairs and such, people give stress balls out. Get those, let them squeeze those, or let them squeeze that rolled up washcloth. But that way it will keep their hands from forming this type of a grip, because then it's almost useless to be able to have them help in any way for independence. Have no fires or wood burning fireplace as dementia increases, because you don't know again what they can and would do with that. Call the county sheriff's office to get a peace of mind kit. Include this kit. And just as we were talking about, that one of the programs going to be is the DREAM program. And it's an excellent program about putting a watch on that will continue, kind of like a GPS, that they can continue to be found if they should wander off. We have what we call scent jars. Many of you have seen the scent jars, where we contact the sheriff's department and we say, bring out the hounds, my loved one's wandered off, and they're able to and are successful in finding that loved one much more rapidly than if we'd gotten a team together to say, let's go searching. So it's important, again, that, you know, let's giving our caregivers that peace of mind. You know, they can, a green sticker with the peace of mind kit is a green sticker to put on the outside of the window signifying someone in the house has Alzheimer's, so people are aware of it around you. We talked about a jar. That's a scent kit to be able to put information in it as well as our DNA, but we want to provide some medical information, maybe a picture of your loved one, also the contact information on the refrigerator so somebody knows. I do a lot of training with the fire department, and I tell them, I said, you know, one of these days you're going into a home, you're taking away the caregiver, and there stands or sits the loved one with the diagnosis. What happens? You know, they don't have time to find the phone number to a family member to come and get them, or, you know, to be able to know exactly what to do. An example of that is we had a gentleman who was in a car accident, and he was in a coma for 3 days. Well, lo and behold, until he woke up, they didn't know that he was a caregiver. So their loved one was at home for 3 days by themselves. And so we want to make sure that for the safety, people around us know, our neighbors know, we've got that plan B per se, that everyone has something prepared for that incident to happen. There's ID bracelets out there that are at a minimal cost. Again, the scent jar are both available through AFO, the sheriff's office. We can get a scent jar to anybody who would like to request it. The other thing that I suggest always putting on the scent jar or putting it somewhere is whether my loved one is left or right-handed, because it's important to know what is their dominant hand, because more than likely, if I have a loved one who has exited my home, they are going to go to their dominant side first. So if I'm right-handed, I'm going to turn to the right. If I'm left-handed, I'm going to turn to the left. So it allows us to have a starting point of finding them in a much quicker manner. The caregiver should always carry an updated picture of their loved one. It doesn't help us if you pull out a picture that's 30 years old. We need to have current ones. If it's just a matter of a picture on your phone, taking them on a regular basis as his condition deteriorates so that you have a good picture of him or her. And like I said, just add that and update it onto your phone. Make neighbors aware of the potential wandering and how to respond. Caregivers, be careful with facial gestures, rolling of eyes, and verbal responses when you are frustrated. Your loved one can sense you are frustrated and respond negatively. And we've already kind of talked about the tone of voice, how we say things pretty much sets the tone for the day. If you need to lock a door and and the loved one is upset, you could always say the floor just got washed or something else you could feel would resolve their frustration. Sometimes we've talked about in our last program, putting a black rug or something in front of the door. For them, they recognize that as a hole and they will not step past it. They have all kind of special locks now that we're seeing in a lot of places. Number locks where you have to punch in a number to be able to open the door. Lowe's, Home Depot, all those places have special locks that you can also put on your doors for safety. If loved one needs a depend, leave on dresser and say, this is a good product for us to try. You know, again, we don't want to demean them. We know that sometimes we have to use some type of product to be able to help with the incontinence, to be able to make sure that, you know, we don't get frustrated and have to clean up those accidents in the corner or in the trash can or just out on the floor. So we want to make sure, again, that we don't demean them and know that using some items such as Depends, pull up, panties that they have now, they've changed these products so much that it really is difficult for anybody to tell that anything is even being used. So again, these are just a few of the miscellaneous hints, again, that our caregivers have come up with. and they're important to us. Next slide. We just have some other ideas of talking about having a plan B if something happens to you or the caregiver. Who will take care of your loved one? Where will they go? Where are their medications and other necessities? Maybe have a suitcase packed with a few things such as clothes, depends, bed and bath needs. Who will be notified? Names and phone numbers. Where will you go? Doctor, hospital, insurance information. There's a lot to think about. It's almost like planning that wedding or planning that big event. We've got to have things in place. I know Lisa has an excellent program about keeping your ducks in a row, of making sure that, again, these things are in order. So it's one less thing on your mind if something happens to me as the caregiver. Your children need to know what your plan is as a caregiver, because ultimately, if you're in the hospital, someone's going to be coming to decide what needs to be done. And it's like pre-planning. Nobody likes to do it, nobody wants to do it, but what a saving and peace of mind it is for you as a caregiver, for your family to know that, hey, maybe Lisa's already helped you search facilities. Maybe you've already got a place in mind. You've got the idea of what can happen if it happens, because we're given 1 hour at a time if we're lucky, or a minute at a time. Things can change in a snap of a finger. And so we want to make sure that our families are cared for, our loved one with the diagnosis is cared for, because ultimately then what happens is somebody takes over that doesn't care as much and unconditionally as you do as a caregiver. So work on that plan B. Lisa can help you with that plan B. Write things down that you want and need, and phone numbers and contacts, because if you already have arrangements made, make sure somebody knows that so that you're able to ease into that. You may be lying in a hospital bed, and if you're lying in a hospital bed, what are you going to be doing? You're going to be worrying about your loved one at home. What's happening? Who has them? How is he or she behaving? What is taking place? And so it's important that you give yourself that peace of mind. Next slide. We've talked about journaling in the past. I can't emphasize enough how important journaling is. And I mainly feel, even for myself, it helps me not have to remember everything. As we all age, our memory isn't as good as it used to be. I may remember it a couple days later, but I don't remember what happened at that moment. Even for myself, every time I'm at the doctor's office, I'm journaling it in my phone so I know exactly what my appointment was and what it was for, because nobody else is going to know that. So it's important for the journaling is to keep and write things down every day. If you write something, it doesn't have to be big. It can be a one-liner, it can be a whole page, but write something down about the day. I had a family member, she was going through this journey with her mom, and she kept 2 journals. One journal was the day-to-day incidents. The second journal, she called her Sparkle Journal. And calling it her Sparkle Journal, she only put positive things in the Sparkle Journal. Maybe it was that mom recognized her for a second. Maybe mom knew her name. Mom told her she loved her. She felt loved. She got a hug. Those were positive moments. Something funny maybe happened that they laughed about, and unbeknown to the loved one with the diagnosis, didn't know what she was laughing about, but it was a fun moment. So she would always put those great moments in her Sparkle Journal. When her mom passed away, she took the journal of her day-to-day frustrations, her day-to-day memories, and she threw it away. The only journal she kept was the sparkle journal because she wanted to remember the good moments, the precious moments, the moments that their relationship clicked. So the journaling for her went in two different directions, but the journaling was important because sometimes we have to refer back to our journal. You know, it always never fails when I talk to somebody, they'll say, well, mom or dad has just been diagnosed. And then they begin to think about it and talk about it as a family. And then they start to recall incidents 4 or 5 years ago. And they recall, do you remember when dad or mom kept getting lost? Or do you remember when they just kind of just forgot things that we had already told them? And so things begin to come back to full circle to say, well, you know what? That could have been the start of this journey, and we were not aware of it. So journaling is twofold. It allows you to put things down, but it allows you to be able to recall them then. Journal is a great thing to take to your doctor so that you can tell them this incident's now happening. It used to happen once every 6 months. Now it's happening monthly. Now it's happening weekly. To be able to give the doctor a timeline, to give him some resource as to what the journey's been looking like, because your doctor doesn't know. Nobody knows except you. So writing those things in a journal allows you to keep track of it. And it also allows you to rest your mind and thinking, I have to remember this, I have to remember this. But it allows you again to put it on paper. You can forget about it, but you know that you can always refer back to it. So keeping a journal is important for both yourself and both for the information. And it also helps you kind of give yourself kudos and to kind of, you know, if you're documenting an incident and how you handled it, it kind of gives you a satisfaction of knowing we got through this day. So keep that journal of funny things, you know, the incidents that happen, the times that you laughed. We have to have a sense of humor on this journey, without question. We have to. And so it's important to journal those things. Journal new caregiving strategies. Are they working? Are they not working? Keep a list of programs and healthcare available. And if you have tried some, write your experience. It's not successful for everybody, but we know that everybody's grabbing for any information possible to try to hope that something will work while caring for their loved one. Next slide. Our last slide, we're going to talk just briefly about research. There's so much out there and so much happening. You know, we have our techies who get on the internet and research, and some things you may find contradicting each other. Other things become important to you because it really relates to where your loved one is on this journey. So it's important again that, you know, we understand that research continues. We hear about, oh, we think we've got something. We think we have found a medication. We think we have found a way to cure Alzheimer's. And then our research goes without being successful. And then we start all over again. To my knowledge, to this day, there is no cure, and there hasn't been a magic pill and a magic medication that slows this process down or stops this process. We know that it's the disease that's here to stay. It's a disease that is not going away. We are finding more and more people being diagnosed with this. Some of you might have heard, remember, I think it's John Haney, someone who always dealt with wildlife and was a huge success and was a TV star and really had a well-known reputation, has just been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So we know there is no particular gender, there is no particular race, there is no particular age, there is no particular culture. that determines this person is going to get Alzheimer's. We do know that it can hit someone in our family in a moment. Recently, my sister at the age of 68 has been diagnosed with frontal lobe dementia. And so we know that her journey is just beginning. So it hits us in the most areas that we least expect it. And so we know that it can touch any one of our lives. There are many research studies out there that you can become involved in your community. Choose a study that is promising to yourself, taking your loved one in and getting tested. There are so many, they're looking for people to be able to take this journey to help with research and to help find a cure for this. If you participate in a research study, you can receive testing at no cost. So that's always a benefit to loved ones as well, is to be able to go down that journey and not know that it's going to cost them an arm and a leg to be able to have testing or to be a part of research. You know, again, this is a journey none of us asked for. This is a journey that is different from any other journey. This journey is different for everyone with the diagnosis. There is no one journey the same. It's like our fingerprints. Everybody has a different journey. We know that COVID has been a tremendous scare for our loved ones who are caregivers, or have loved ones placed, or have loved ones that they're caring for in their home still. They're scared. And we all have lived a different life these last 9 to 10 months. And I guess basically it's been a year now. So it's hard being that caregiver. It's hard being that person chosen to be the caregiver. Many people will say, well, why wasn't I the one with the diagnosis and my loved one would be the caregiver? That's not God's plan. God's plan felt that you were stronger. You were the person who could cope with this caregiver role, and therefore you are chosen. And so please take care of yourself. Please reach out. We don't have all the answers, but we're there for you. We can help you. I have one lady who calls me frequently and she says, I just need to hear your voice. I just need to have you talk me down because I'm frustrated, and things will be okay. Sometimes that's all you need, is somebody just to listen to you. And I know they'll put my phone number up at the closing of this program. And please don't hesitate to call myself, Lisa. We can help direct you in the right direction, to be able to assist you, at least to be able to listen to you, hear your frustrations. It's nothing we've not heard. It's nothing that we can't reach out and help you with. So thank you for being a caregiver. Thank you for being that chosen one. Thank you for allowing the opportunity to care for your loved one as you have been chosen. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Once again, a wealth of knowledge. So many things I hadn't thought of. Safety and travel. Thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom with us. Does anyone have any questions right now? While we're waiting to see if anyone has any questions, I do want to let people know that on my website, if you go to Your Key to Senior Living Options, I do have something called a Senior Emergency Toolkit, in which people can print it and share it with, again, their family. So it lists all of the contact information of their loved ones, their families, their doctor, their pharmacy. And this is something that they can certainly print and put on the refrigerator, so that if those police officers, first responders come to the house and say, okay, I'm taking the caregiver out now, what do I do with the person that's left behind, right? The first thing, do I call a neighbor? Do I call a home care agency? Do I call a family out of state? What is the plan for that loved one that's left behind for that 1 hour, 1 day, 1 month, or 90-day plan, right? Because you do not know in an event of an emergency, if the caregiver is being taken out by emergency services, how long will they be gone, right? So it's really important to have that 2 a.m. plan, ducks in a row plan, and also have your tools in your toolbox for emergency planning, right? So many people that I work with are in their 80s, 90s, right? And there is likely going to be a medical event at some point in their lives. What is the plan? Especially if they are a caregiver, right? Accidents happen. What is the plan? So I know you work with a lot of families on making sure that the caregiver is doing everything they can to stay safe, right? And not implode, because this is a very, very difficult journey. But again, I encourage anybody to reach out to Jackie. I know you've talked to many of my families and kind of, again, talk them off the ledge, because it's really a lonely journey. And I don't think children have a sense of how great this journey is, how difficult it is, and the burdens of it psychologically, right? You know, the guilt of, do I look at placement? What if I walk away for a minute? What, you know, what's the plan? People have to have a plan in case there is an emergency. So I'm thankful that you're working with families and trying to get them to be realistic about expectations. I also kind of keyed in on your discussion about journaling. Wouldn't it be interesting for the children to even see some of the journaling to get a sense of how heavy the burden is on the caregiver? Maybe they would then plan to spend some time with the loved one with memory loss, so that the caregiver could have a break, or even pay for perhaps some home care or respite care so the caregiver could recharge the batteries.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually met a family this week, and a gentleman, and he had an adult son with special needs, and it reminded me very much of the journey of dementia, right? The wife had never wanted the son out of her reach, right? And now he was in his 50s and they were in their 70s, and he said, you know, it keeps me up at night because what's my 2 a.m. plan, right? And so I was thinking very much about you and, you know, your support, and how people just don't even think out of the box to reach out to you, right? As much as you're there and you do so many fundraisers and try to get people on board with education, how many people we just can't touch, right? That just don't know that you're a great resource.
Well, it becomes a big dignity issue. And a lot of, I said, you know, we can pinpoint numbers in our own areas here to determine how many people have a diagnosis. But my concern is how many people we aren't aware of that are living in their homes, sheltered and being protective of their loved one, and not allowing anyone to assist them until the point of, one, the caregiver gets ill, or two, the caregiver passes away, or the family comes down, says, Mom or Dad, you can't do this anymore. You know, it becomes very difficult. And it's a pride thing, it's a dignity thing. And we know and understand that, but we've got to encourage our caregivers to reach out to be able to get that help that they need, even if it's one day a week. 4 hours a week is better than nothing.
Yeah, it's definitely important for the caregiver to know on Tuesday, Thursday, from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, I've got my time, right?
Mhm.
Whatever that is, it's going to be my time and I can do what I want. They look so forward to that, right?
Yeah.
And so, again, trying to find a home care agency, a respite. Again, communities are beginning to open up for day programming or respite care. They weren't during the pandemic. But I do see so many caregivers now so deconditioned, as well as the loved one with dementia, because they've been stuck in their house and they haven't had a lot going on. So I really, I love all your safety tips. I know people are going to begin to travel now and to take their loved ones some places they may not realize what a year has made a difference in their stamina, their ability to cope. Even driving on the highway is a whole new experience, right? I mean, I went to Ocala to get my COVID shot, and I thought, holy cow, I don't know when I've been on the highway going north. It's probably been 2 years, right? And I thought, wow, the traffic's different going to Ocala. You know, I was like, okay, I'm used to being in the villages with
Yep.
60 mile an hour, right? So yeah, I mean, we all have to like kind of put our seatbelts back on and get ready, because we're re-entering society. And I think that's it kind of goes back to, we've been all deconditioned during this
Yes.
period of time, and we do need our support groups. So
Yeah. A lot more depression, a lot more, individuals dealing with things that they'd never dealt with before. It's like not being able to go outside, and at least we have sunshine here. Other places don't have sunshine, and we know that plays a big role on our mood for the day. But we've seen a lot come through out on this pandemic.
yeah, yeah. So, well, again, Jackie, thank you so much. I know this show is going to be archived. So again, you're a wealth of knowledge. I do encourage people to reach out to you all the time. You are just so important to all of us and keeping us all safe and giving us great tips and techniques for this crazy journey that people are on. It's very difficult and unexpected, and your support gives us the tools to be able to move forward. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, stay safe, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. All right, bye-bye.